Good evening. I want to welcome everyone to the February 8th, 2024 Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee. And first order of business is to approve our minutes from January 4th, and I'm going to call on our Vice Chairman, Trey Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was very impressed with Ms. Jolly's well-written minutes. Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Next item is public comments, which we've had no one request to make a comment tonight, so we'll move on to our investment report. And while Teb is heading up here, after he and Michael speak, item 4, I'm going to ask that we move item 16 up to 5th place, if that's okay with the committee. Mr. Batey, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Ted Batey, Rutherford County Trustee. Rates are basically the same, except LGIP is down about 3 basis points, so rates are kind of steady. Just to kind of give you a little report, our money is fairly short term, but anything that's a year or longer, we're going to give up 75 to 100 basis points of yield. And the Fed has not guaranteed, but almost said probably not going to have a rate cut till at least June, which is 4 months in. We might have 3, but if we're going to go 4 months kind of where we are, we lock in something today, 100 basis points less. How far down do rates have to go for that to make sense? It just hasn't seemed like a good time for us to lock in. We're watching it pretty closely, but the short term, the yield curve is so inverted that it's hard to give up the bird in hand for something less. So just let you know we are watching it, but we're getting good rates, and it just seems like the place to be today. That's my report, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Batey. Any questions from the committee? If not, I have a motion to approve. Commissioner Piercy. Second, Commissioner Johnson. Thank you, guys. Any further discussion? Hear none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Okay, Michael, if you would.
So I'll point out a couple things this month on the fund condition report. If you'll notice, our cash balance has increased to a little over $700 million. The main reason for that is property tax collections that are coming in peak property tax season. So I did want to point that out. Additionally, on the revenue report, last month we had a very low percentage of property tax collected. However, we did get that large escrow payment in, so we are on track of where we normally are at this time of year. Additionally, our revenue is looking good, but a majority of that is due to the investment incomes that we're receiving. And so we've treated a lot of those as one-time revenues because we don't know that rates will be that high for long. But our revenue is a little above where it should be. But most of that is due to investment income. Our sales tax for the county has remained flat this year, and so I didn't want that to skew when you're looking at a little bit of increased revenue. It's mostly due to investment income. And with that, I'll take any questions, and that's my report.
Any questions for the director? We'll entertain a motion. Mr. Johnson moves for approval. Second. Mr. Irving, thank you. Any questions? None. All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carries. At this time, we're going to ask the mayor to come forward. This is item 16, impact fee study discussion and related general fund budget amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking me out of order. This request is for $60,000. It is for the impact fee study that would necessarily need to take place in the event that the General Assembly passes a bill. They're working on several options for the county. The reason for the timing now in advance of the passage of that legislation is that several interest groups, notably the realtors, the home builders, and others, have requested some data points and data sets to justify the position as it relates to how much and when an impact fee and/or a development tax would occur and what those guardrails or those curbs would look like. This particular study would identify that. The group that, since this is professional service, Tischler and Bice is the firm. They have worked with the cities of Murfreesboro and Smyrna, as well as Sumner County, Williamson County, and the city of Lebanon. So they're very, very familiar with the area. Doug DeMossi has requested by name this particular group. I've spoken to Nick about can we sole source this, and we can because this is a professional service contract. So I think we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's, but I'll be glad to take questions.
Irving.
Or what are we assessing, the proposed amount of the fee, or whether there should be one or not?
Whether there should be one and what those guardrails would look like if there were one.
Okay, and the proposals, you mentioned proposals, your expectation is that there would be an impact fee?
That would be my expectation, but that expectation would be borne out after the study is completed.
Okay. Has there been indications that there have been movement on the part of the legislature to change the law so that there could be an impact fee along the lines of what appears to be being proposed?
Yes, there are a number of different proposals working through the idea phase out of the General Assembly, especially within our delegation. But I think it would be very prudent for this commission and the mayor's office to be ready if and when they settle on a final solution as to how they're going to work with the county and what that looks like. I would like for this study to be undertaken. It won't be complete. The length of the study will take approximately 6 months. So the results of the study won't come back till after the fiscal year ends. So I just want the county to be in a place that if they decide to move, they can move.
Is this an impact fee or modifications to, is this going to be studying an impact fee or modifications to the adequate facilities tax?
This is primarily an impact fee, but it's not exclusive to that. What this study is going to do is it's going to define the need and then define how that need can be addressed under the current statute.
Okay, is there any kind of assessment concerning the relationship between impact fees and spending efficiency? In other words, whether the schools are building efficient, cost-effective, prudent schools as opposed to functional buildings.
So you're asking, that would be a question for Tischler and Bice, not for the mayor. But I can tell you that what Tischler and Bice does do is they reach out to all the stakeholders, including the home builders, the realtors. They obviously speak to school board and the superintendent, as well as county commissioners who may have an opinion on that. So they're interested in gathering all data points and information that can create a comprehensive result as a result of that study.
Okay.
So they don't go into this with any biases, Commissioner.
I'm not asking about biases.
I know, I'm just making
trying to
sure
get a sense
we're talking
for-
the same thing.
Yeah, I'm talking about assessing the relationship between impact fees and spending efficiency. And I think what I'm hearing is the answer is probably no. Is that a fair statement?
No, that's not fair. I can't speak for Tischler and Bice about what the study is going to produce in the form of a result.
Okay. So we would have to talk to them. Is there any analysis of how much property taxes are going to go up as a result of an impact fee? Any kind of analysis like that?
If we ask them to put that into their assessment, I'm sure they would be glad to put that particular component in their equation.
So that's another question for Tischler
And Bice.
and Vice. Okay. How long does it take to put together a study?
They have told us it's going to be about 4 to 6 months.
Okay, so there's time to sort this out depending on what the legislature does and whatever comes out of it, the parameters.
Well, I guess it depends on what your end goal is. I want to go back to one of my original statements. One of the objections on those who opposed the county's efforts that were exemplified in the resolution was the lack of data regarding what would an impact fee or development tax look like, what kind of guardrails would be in place, and how much it would be. So I'm trying to anticipate those questions so that we can have a quantifiable study that everybody can agree is a study that is unique to Rutherford County and unique to the problem that we're trying to solve. So the answer to your question, we do have time if all we're going to do is wait for the General Assembly. Sure, we've got all the time in the world. But if what we're trying to do is provide additional information, quantifiable data, so that they can make a good decision in Nashville on behalf of Rutherford County, then no, timing is not on our side. We need to move with all due haste.
To me, this seems premature. I mean, we don't know what, if anything, is coming out of the legislature.
We do know something's coming out. You're right, we don't know what, but we have gotten a commitment from our delegation and from the home builders that Rutherford County is in need of help, and we do need to do something. We do have that commitment, Commissioner. Now, what it looks like, we don't know, but that is correct.
And that's my question. I mean, I understand with the first part and why you said that, but I mean, the piece that I'm kind of trying to figure out is, you mentioned guardrails, all that kind of stuff. At this point, we don't know what comes out of the legislature, so it's kind of premature, it appears, to begin a study when we don't know exactly what they're going to be studying, what the parameters are, how the potential need, and we don't have, I believe we'd have to get them to come in and tell us whether they're willing to do this relationship between fees and spending efficiency. We don't know about that. We don't appear to know what the ultimate need would be at this point.
You and I would disagree on that point.
Okay, so, but from my perspective, it seems premature, and we can respectfully disagree. I'm just going to say it seems premature for this. Ordinarily, I would be in favor of it, but what I would like to see is, you know, along the lines of what we were talking about, the effect on property taxes, the effect on affordability, which I've read their report. It appears to address that a little bit. They say, yeah, we're going to address affordability a little bit, do a little bit of analysis there. But I'm concerned that we don't know enough at this point to authorize a study like this. That's my concern at this point.
Okay? I don't share that concern. There a question?
Mr. Harris, are you, I can come back or you can finish.
I'll defer to Commissioner Harris. Go ahead.
All right, Mayor, we kind of talked about this situation. Me and you both know where I've kind of went on it, you too. Now, my question is this. This study should tell us, for instance, the maximum we could charge and look at areas like that. Is that correct?
This data will come back and give us a range. That is correct.
Okay, so I have my relationships with delegates. You have your talks with the delegates and the lobbyists. And from what I'm understanding, most of our delegates are saying the word guardrail.
That's correct.
That be correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so this is you trying to address that.
This is one of the concerns we're going to address with the study. Yes, sir.
Okay, so this, you say 4 to 6 months, that puts us in the summer.
Yes.
So is that going to be enough time for us to be on this agenda as far as getting a bill passed?
So what I think we will get from Tischler and Bice is some preliminary data that may be effective as the legislation goes, whatever that legislation is, moves through the Tennessee General Assembly, which is why I'm here tonight. We will not have a completed study probably before the end of the fiscal year, but as they start to accumulate data, as they do these, as they reach out to these interest groups, these interest groups like the home builders, like the realtors, and other stakeholders in the community, then as they begin to collect that data, it's not unlike what the GNRC is doing with Plan Rutherford. You know, as they collect this data, you can make certain assumptions without having the full report. That is my hope here.
Maybe this will help. I know where Commissioner Irvin's trying to go. My question to you is there any money in the budget, mayor's budget, that we could move to help pay for some of this?
That would be a question for Mr. Smith. Michael? I defer all things financial to Mr. Smith, our finance director. Commissioner Harris.
That's fine. I just know that, you know, being part of this and having meetings with you on this today,
Yeah.
the delegates and the state reps are asking for a lot of things. And I know this is one of them is I don't like to say the word guardrail, but I know that's one of the areas they're looking at. And I'm assuming this will address that.
Yeah.
But you already said you would.
Yeah, and so what we're trying to do is we're trying to address very specifically one of the concerns that our delegation has had about quantifiable data that they can use to justify the position of moving forward either with an impact fee or development tax or increasing the adequate facilities tax. There's just a dearth of data out right there right now concerning Rutherford County only. We have a lot of data statewide. We have all these different studies statewide. But the fact of the matter is, gentlemen, Rutherford County is genuinely unique in all the state with its growth and the magnitude of the problem as it relates to funding the schools related to that growth. This study is assigned to address that so we can have that quantifiable data so when we get ready to make a decision, we can make that decision. We will have to do this study regardless if we're going to move forward. I think it's better to do it now instead of later so the delegation can have at least some part of this data to help them make a decision. This is what they've asked for. I'm just trying to help them with a tool that they've asked for, in part.
And my last question is, if you do get this study passed through here today, would we as a commission be able to ask a parameter question for them to look at? Like, for instance, most of the monies, most of the bills that I'm hearing, all the money has to go to schools. And I'm wanting to know if they could look into seeing if it was 90% schools, 10% debt services.
I don't see why they, as a matter of fact, I would encourage them to receive input from the county commission, and maybe, quite honestly, that is something that is done through an assigned committee that they present to, as opposed to the entire commission. I'm thinking out loud now, Chairman Phillips, but maybe that's something you should, as the chair, should give thought with and maybe have conversations with the relevant committee chairs and determine how, is there a special committee formed? I wouldn't think so, but where would they come and make a presentation and get feedback on some kind of direction? Because I think that would be appropriate.
Off the top of my head, it'd be steering and budget, both of those committees. Off the top of my head, I think that's where it should go. Let me just say, if I might, Commissioner Harris, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
Go ahead, Commissioner Phillips.
the deal with what we're talking about, Commissioner Irvin says it's premature, okay? So we don't do it. And nothing happens in Nashville. Nothing has happened in Nashville the last 12 to 14 years. What this does, if we don't do it, we're kicking the can down the road, and next year we'll be in the exact same spot that we're in right now. If nothing happens in Nashville and we have the study, we have ammunition to load our gun. They won't have the type of objections that they had last year and the objections that they have this year if we have the study in hand. It needs to be done regardless. So if we don't get what we want out of Nashville this year, just like we didn't last year, we'll have the ammunition to load our gun to say this is what the study says that we need. So don't delay it. It needs to be done, and it needs to be done now. We're not continuing to kick the can down the road. This needs to happen regardless. So whether we get what we want in Nashville this year or not, Next year will be another opportunity to approach them, but we'll have all of this information in place, and the complaints that we've heard about putting a ceiling and stuff on that, it'll already be in place. So I'm saying that regardless of what happens in Nashville, this study needs to happen and needs to happen now.
If I may add, Mr. Chairman, I quite honestly wish we had done this study last year. If we had had the study done last year and we'd had the results this year to give our delegation, I can't help but think that information would have been an asset to them as they make a decision on behalf of the county. And so we're waiting for somebody to go, it's like the chicken and the egg. Well, somebody has got to make a decision, gentlemen, about the information our delegation needs to make on behalf of this county. This is a critical part of that. And so I'm requesting that be done tonight.
Commissioner, Chairman Harris, do you have some thoughts to follow up? And then I'm going to recognize Commissioner Irving.
No, I just think, Michael, if you have anything you want to add what we talked about.
So two things I'll add. One, I did look at the mayor's budget. There may be $5,000 we could move, but nothing close to the 60 that would be required. Two, you made a comment on could it go like 90% to education and 10% to debt service, but I would argue that money going to education for debt service, I mean, that's the 85% or so, 80% of our debt service is education. So I think that's the relief we need is the debt service for education. So hopefully that, just to clarify those two things.
Commissioner
Tough
Irving.
sell, though, isn't it? Tough sell.
So we need to make.
But I'm saying most of everybody that's talking to is saying it needs to all go to education.
Well,
So I would be asking for something that's possibly not going could happen.
well, I will say this, but if the delegation were to follow the instructions that we gave them in the resolution that we have in the form of a bill, and they were to allow Rutherford County, this commission, the same authority that Murfreesboro, Smyrna, and Laverne currently have, if they were to allow just that, and that's what we're asking for, is that same authority, then we would still be constrained by state statute that any impact fees collected would go to education and education debt service. We would not still have the latitude, Commissioner Harris, that Murfreesboro, Smyrna, and Laverne have to build a park or to improve roads. We still would not have that latitude. So there's another guardrail. Right, so here's a guardrail. The guardrail is if we were to get impact fees like Smyrna, Laverne, or Murfreesboro, we would still be constrained by state law that those impact fees would be dedicated toward debt service on schools, capital projects, and operations.
Michael.
I want to add, it would not be unlike our current school facilities tax. Half of it goes into their capital projects fund, and the other half goes into debt service to pay for debt specifically related for schools. So I would assume it'd be very similar to that with what we're asking for an impact fee. We could put it towards the capital projects to build a school, or we could put it directly to the debt service to build a school. Either one would work. So I wouldn't want that to be a sticking point for the delegation.
Commissioner Irving, you recognize.
Thank you. Okay, one clarification. In the letter of transmittal, it talks about an update to Rutherford County School impact fee study. Is there a prior Rutherford County School impact fee study?
I'm unaware of any prior impact fee study done for Rutherford County Schools by any outside third-party consulting group.
Okay, and that's fair. It's just that's what the transmittal talks about, an update. So can you describe, try to help me out here, the specific output, the specific deliverable that you're looking for? Is this, I mean, to Commissioner Phillips' point, I'm trying to figure out, in addition to who pays for it, that's certainly a valid point, the specific output or specific deliverable that you're looking for. Is it, Mr. Phillips, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, I'm trying to understand, is it an advocacy moral piece or an advocacy study?
Absolutely not.
Okay, if it's not an advocacy study, then it's assessing something that we don't know the parameters of yet.
We don't, but it's a
how can we, with respect, how can we do a study of something we don't know what the guardrails are yet.
So, because we don't, they do. And they've done this many times before. They've done it with Williamson County, numerous local governments in the mid-state. What they do is they sit down with the stakeholders and they define the problem. Defining the problem establishes the output. So they define the problem from the various perspectives of the various stakeholders. That definition of the problem then defines the output. So it's a quantitative study that, as Chairman Harris said, defines in the result what the range is. If you want to see an output or a deliverable, you can look at the Tischler-By study that was done on behalf of Murfreesboro for an impact fee. That is available online.
And that's what it would look like if we were to get the same as Murfreesboro, which a lot of people put really low odds on. I'm trying to get a sense for whether or not, it might make sense. We don't know what the guardrails are, what the parameters of the legislation are, whether it's an impact fee, whether it's an adjustment to the adequate facilities tax. At that point, it might make sense, in my view, to take a look at what makes sense and what the impacts of that addition would be on affordability, on the other needs of the community, to basically try to sort out the schools issue. In other words, so far I don't really have a good sense for what the deliverable is. If it's not an advocacy piece, and if it's not something if it's trying to be based on something that we don't know what the parameters are, that's kind of hard to assess.
Except, Commissioner, with all due respect, we do know what the parameters are, and I never said that. So I didn't say we didn't know what the parameters are. The parameters are defined by Tischler and By through the stakeholders. Those are the parameters. So, and we do know what the guardrails are. We may not know what all the guardrails are, but we know very clearly what the guardrails are coming from various stakeholders, like the home builders and like the realtors. We know exactly what they are. They've been quite public about that. We also know what the guardrails are with regard to what statutes are available to the county as it relates to the results of that impact study. We've talked about one of those just a minute ago. State statute prohibits any result of this study to impact anything other than education. That is a guardrail. We don't have the same guardrails, Commissioner Irvin, as the city of Murfreesboro. So what they take is they take state law, they take our private acts, they take the input from the stakeholders, and those parameters then establish what the guardrails and what the potential impact would be.
My point is, and I agree, identify the problem first. Okay, I agree with that process. What we don't know, and what my understanding of this would be, what the deliverables would be, is how would a impact fee or adequate facilities tax address within the context of whatever legislation comes out, what would that look like in terms of action by the commission to address those specific needs. So I'm not sure we're totally on different pages. My concern is we don't know what that legislation looks like at this point. So we really can't, we may know what the problem is, we may know that there's a big school capital project out there, but we may not know. What we don't know is what the legislation looks like. So I'm trying to figure out, does it make sense to do the study now, or does it make sense to do the study after we know what that looks like in probably, March, April, if not sooner?
Right. I would argue it would have made much better sense to do it a year ago, because the delegation and other stakeholders have specifically said you don't have any quantifiable data to justify the fact that you believe the Rutherford County Commission and the mayor's office believe that growth in some measure should pay for itself. So what this study seeks to do in part is to provide those data points to the delegation and those stakeholders that raise that objection.
Well, I'm sorry.
Chairman
I don't
Phillips,
mean to
you're
interrupt.
recognized.
Thank you. We're arguing over $60,000, and there's plenty of money in our budget to approve this. School board wants it, And if we don't fund it, they're going to fund it. Better that it comes out of the commission. It's better that it comes out of the commission because we are the ones who've been lobbying our legislative delegation in Nashville for years. This study is needed whether it's this year or next year. The timeliness in my mind is important. If we fund this right now, the message that we're sending to our legislative delegation as they're being bombarded with lobbyists, not only our lobbyists, but other lobbyists as well, trying to put together some type of legislation. So the message that we're sending is that we are still on track with what we've asked for as it relates to the resolution that we've passed and sent to Nashville. So once again, where the $60,000 comes from, to me is important, but it's coming one way or the other. Our school board will fund this if we do not. So the deal is that it needs to be done, and I'd rather see it come out of this commission than out of the school board's budget, simply because we are the ones that have been working on this for at least the last 14 years.
Vice Chairman Gooch, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what you're looking for is a motion to approve this study and the budget transfer.
Yes, sir.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion to approve the study.
Second.
And a second, Commissioner Sereno. Further discussion.
I have one question. You mentioned the Home Builders Association and the Realtors Association. Are they going to play a part in the study that we're fixing to fund?
They will play a part as a stakeholder, and they will be sought out, and their opinions will be sought after and taken seriously as other stakeholders in the community. Yes, sir.
Have you asked to see if they'd be willing to fund part of this study?
No, sir, I have not. I want the county to fund this, Commissioner Piercy.
Commissioner Harris.
Do you have a second?
I do.
Okay. Can I make a motion for amendment? And I don't know.
You can make an amendment.
I'm for doing this study, but I'd also like to have a budget amendment where we are taking $4,000 out of the mayor's budget to help pay for this study. So I am for this study. I just want to use some money to help offset on this.
No objection.
Okay, that's
So
my.
I have a amendment to the motion. Do I hear a second to? And Commissioner Johnson seconds the amendment to the motion. So is there any question about the amendment? If not, we'll go ahead and vote on that.
Yeah, we need to know what line item it's coming out of.
That's what I was, if the mayor's amendable, can we take it out of 189, 101, 51, 300, 189?
No objection.
Any further discussion or questions? Mark, call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
This is on the amendment.
Yes. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
No.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
No.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Now we will be voting on the original motion as amended, which is basically 4,000 of the 60,000 requested will be coming from the mayor's budget. The balance will be coming from our fund balances. Any other questions? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
No.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you,
Mayor.
committee.
Okay, we're back on track now. Our next item is a risk management financial report. Welcome.
Hello, Commissioners. Susan Thompson. Assistant Director of Safety in the Insurance and Risk Management Department. I'm presenting on January's financial reports for our department. We'll start with the Fund 264. For the month of January, the revenue was $1,742,179. Expenses, $1,592,586, for a difference of $149,593. That is the same for the calendar year to date. That brings the fiscal year-to-date total for revenue at $13,063,107, expenses $12,931,225, for a difference of $131,882. For the Fund 266, for the month of January, workers' comp, there was zero paid out. OJI, $73,443.31, and that is our total for the month. That brings our fiscal year-to-date total for workers' comp to $5,916.37. OJI, $298,155.40, for a total of $304,071.71. I'm sorry, 77 cents. And then for the county legal expenses for the month of January, it's $25,802.19, and that concludes my report.
You look so much better than Ed. And that is a joke.
He's trained me well.
Yeah. Good job, Mr. Elam. Any questions? Hear none, I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Johnson moves to approve the
Second.
report. Commissioner Sereno seconds. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Next is the general fund budget amendments for fire rescue.
Good evening. I'm Josh Sanders. I'm your County Fire Marshal here on behalf of Chief Farley. I've got two budget amendments this evening. The first one is to recognize insurance recovery revenue for two vehicles that were totaled and appropriate the funds for replacing those vehicles.
Any questions from the committee? Hear none, I'm going to ask one. What vehicles were wrecked and whose was at fault?
There was one that caught fire on a brush fire scene and was totaled, and the other one was one of our vehicles that was hitting an intersection that was not at fault on our end.
Hit by a citizen while on a call.
Correct. While responding, yes, sir.
In motion when that happened, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, on the wreck?
Yes.
Yes, sir. They were going through an intersection and somebody ran a red light on them, I believe.
Understandable. I've been sitting at 3 red lights and been rear-ended, sitting dead still here in this county, so it happens. Okay, that answered my questions there. Any other questions from the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Got another amendment. Do you want to take it also?
Let's see.
Kind of similar. There's revenue and expenditure.
They're recognizing revenue from arsons. It's up to the committee. Is it okay to put these together? Please continue.
The second budget amendment is to recognize revenue for restitution from arson cases and appropriate the funds.
Okay, have a motion. Second, Commissioner Irving. Now, how do we get restitution from arson cases? That's where you're at doing an investigation, and who's making the restitution?
Yes, sir. So how that works is when we make an arrest on an arson case, depending on the case itself, we will assess cost recovery on behalf of the county. So if somebody enters a plea deal for an arson conviction or goes through the litigation process or the adjudication process on their conviction, part of that judgment for the plea or the adjudication of that case will be a calculated amount based on, we look at a per hour, per apparatus figure based on the FEMA fee schedule that then we will levy as a penalty of sorts against the defendant, the accused. And then once that once that judgment comes down, that the defendant has to pay that amount to the county to attempt to, at least in part, recover costs that were expended as a result of their intentional act, their offense.
Any other questions from the committee? Not, I've got one more. Do you also apply to the insurance companies for reimbursement on their policies when y'all are working these fires? Not necessarily arson, but any of them.
There has been some discussion in the past on that, and to be honest with you, Mr. Chairman, I can't remember what the outcome on that was. We had made attempts to do that, but we will have to get back to you on what the outcomes of that were. If I remember correctly, there was some reason why we couldn't do it, but I apologize. I do not recall at this point.
If you don't mind, I would contact our attorney and check on that. I'd be interested to hear at our next meeting what the outcome was, because I know as a volunteer, I actually filed for reimbursement from these insurance companies, and that doesn't come from individual policyholders. And actually, it's a boon for the insurance companies too. And basically, what they do, there's a fee in there to pay the fire departments when they come, and that's something most of them are very glad to pay, because most of the time the fire department gets there, it saves them money. So I'd be very curious to hear how that comes out. If you would, report that to public safety and to us.
Yes, sir. I will follow up on that. Like I said, it's been probably 2 or more years, maybe 3 or more years ago when that was looked at. And I want to say there was a reason, but we'll get that information. We'll get it back to you guys.
Appreciate that. Any other questions from the committee? Not, we don't have a motion on this yet.
We do.
We do? Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll have a motion and a second. Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Piercy?
Yes.
Mr. Reno?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Item 7, General Fund Budget Amendment for Emergency Management. Director?
Chairman, Commissioners, tonight we are requesting to recognize federal funding of $276,035 and place into the 790 line item so that we could purchase equipment, training. This is a no-match grant that occurs yearly.
Those of you that have been on public safety for a long time recognize this. Any other questions for the director?
There's no continuing obligation based on some increase or anything along those lines. Okay, just thank you.
Do I have a motion? Motion and a second. I have a motion. I don't know that I have the second. Second here.
Commissioner Irvin, second.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is item 8, application for amendment to the Teen Learning Grant.
Todd Savage, I'm Assistant Director of Rutherford County Youth Services. We're requesting to apply for an amendment to the Community Intervention Services Day Treatment Grant with the Department of Children's Services. It's a grant that provides pass-through funding for the Rutherford County Teen Learning Center, which is an alternative school for juvenile justice. The amendment will extend the grant through June 30th, 2025. And the amount of the grant is $417,696. This is a grant we've had for many years, and like I said,
Okay, you've heard the request. Are there any questions?
I would like to, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner.
It's a pass-through from...
This is a grant that we get from the state, and I think this is in addition to an existing grant. Is that correct, or am I off on that one?
Is this the Genesis? It's a pass-through for our alternative education. Rutherford County Schools also uses Genesis Learning Academy. Once Genesis submits the reimbursement to the state and we get the money, we send it to Genesis Learning Academy.
Thank you.
Can I also add to that the mayor be authorized to accept this grant should it be awarded, since it's a no-match grant that we've gotten for, I know, at least the 10 years that I've been here, and it's probably more than that.
I think I started youth services in 1997, and it was.
It is. Having said that, do I hear a motion? Commissioner Johnson makes a motion to approve, and that's also allowing the mayor to sign this contract. Okay. Let's make sure I was clear.
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Irving. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Shrinial?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, sir. Okay, item 9, general purpose school fund budget amendment. And I think most of these are going to be cleanups. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. Brian Runyon, CFO, Rutherford County Schools. We have 3 different amendments and 1 request, actually. The first one regards the general purpose school budget, Fund 141. And what this amendment is it cleans up the expenditure line items at mid-year. On the revenue side, the budget is amended to reflect the state grant allocations and additional TISA revenue. On the expenditure side, the larger items of this cleanup amendment reflect the increase in cost of school maintenance supplies and parts, instructional support supplies and materials, homebound 504 contracted services, maintenance contracted services, maintenance instructional equipment. Also, this amendment includes adjustment to salary lines for additional approved ESL growth positions, bonuses for hard-to-staff schools, nursing growth positions, reclassified pay grade for behavioral educational assistants, and the transfer of salaries to correct account codes. This amendment has a net increase of both current year revenue and expenditures of $3,729,367 with no use of fund balance.
This is out of existing line items. They're basically cleaning up. That's something we normally see toward the end of the year. Sounds like you're getting a jump on it. Is that correct?
We did the same mid-year cleanup last year. This is transfer between some of the line items as well as recognizing additional revenue from the state.
So this is basically, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these are basically operating funds as opposed to the capital fund
Correct.
cleanup.
Correct. This is our operating funds within our general purpose budget.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any questions for? There are no questions. I will entertain a motion on this cleanup.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion, Vice Chairman Gooch.
Second.
Commissioner Sereno seconds. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Shrinial?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Item 10 is funding for the Batey Property Elementary School and related general purpose school fund budget amendments.
Jimmy Sullivan, Rutherford County Director of Schools. I was going to let Brian run with that one too, but since I have our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. K. Martin, running the school board, I felt like I needed to at least say something. I mean, Commissioner Gooch, just because you've said that sometimes she can be more efficient, she ran our school board meeting in 31 minutes today and is already finished, so not sure how much longer. All right, so we have a general purpose school fund budget amendment. So on Thursday, January 18th, 2024, Purchasing and Engineering Construction received bids for the construction of the Batey Property at Elementary School. All bids have been reviewed, and Engineering Construction recommends R.G. Anderson Company for a total project cost of $59,857,000. previous approval for allocation of funds of $4,540,000 for architect fees and site development reduces the total amount of the project to $55,317,000. The Board of Education recommends using $30 million be allocated to Batey Elementary project from Fund 141 unassigned fund balance. This reduces the total project amount to $25,317,000, which will be requested from the County Commission via bond issuance. So again, we're asking for $25,317,000.
Director, do you have a timetable on this? Yeah.
We are hoping to open this on August of 2025, and so we're moving as quickly as possible so that we can get this site going. And this is the low bid. A design, we've recycled a design that we've used in the past. It'll be 2 stories, very similar to Rocky Fork Elementary School and John Coleman Elementary School to save on architect fees.
Any questions from the committee? And I see Commissioner Irving. I'll recognize you first.
I'll defer to whoever wishes to ask a question first.
Commissioner Harris.
Just one question. So we're awarding the bid to R.J. Anderson Company. Now, I don't know if you know this might be somebody else's department, but have they built a school for us before? Many?
Many. Okay. Yes, sir. Many.
Thank you.
Commissioner Irving, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this kind of goes to the same line of thinking. It looks like architects' fees were 4.5, and there's another 900 for design. Okay, so that means we're spending 5.4. Okay, Michael's shaking his head, so I'll ask Michael if he could clarify. The question I have is basically, why are we spending so much if we're doing the same design? And basically that's one of the questions. I have several.
So if you're looking at on there, it says a previous approval of allocation of funds for $4.5 million for architects' fees and site development. So previously, there was $900,000 requested for architectural design fees that they moved out of an existing project in Fund 189 to start that. Then the school board brought, I believe it was in January, I believe it was last month, an amendment for $3,640,600 and it's broken down as follows. There was some additional architects and design fee for the site and grading of $600,000, and then $2.79,600,000 for the actual grading package of the site, and then a $250,000 contingency for that was part of the $3.6 million that was brought last month. That would equal the $4.5 million that is listed there. And I believe there was a number transposed. I believe it's $600 that was off from what's on there, but the additional $900,000 that's requested as far as the design fee would be to see the design fee through completion. The original $900 was just to get the design and schematics done, and they've come back now and asked for the additional $900 that would see them through the completion, where the architect sees through completion of the construction phase of the project.
So how much are we paying for architect fees?
So $1.8 million would be specifically allocated to the design, and there was an additional $600, and I'd have to ask Trey Lee, some of that design was to the design fee and site services for the site grading package. So that's going to have some engineering fees in it as well, but they've asked for $1.8 million for the architect and design fees.
I believe it's 4%. So I can't remember if it was 4.2 or 4%. That is part of it. And we have 2 architects at that time last year. One was 5% and one's 4%. Architect fees or something by TCA, we're not allowed to negotiate. We have to go with RFQs first, and then we have their design. So we went with the design that we already had to have a lower fee.
So there's no way to, since we're using the same basic plan, what I'm hearing is there's no way to reduce the architect fees. I get the site piece. I understand that.
Is it 4?
Yeah,
is it 3 or 4?
I believe this was 4.
So I think that was the reduction. I believe the county on some brand new projects is about 5% on the architect fee. I believe that's on state contract rate. Don't quote me on that. I believe that's right. And I believe their reduction is the 3.5 or 4.
Director, there is a on the piece that you had on the school board notes, there is a 4.75 in parentheses, and it's on your on that iPad there too. If you go to that item, I pulled it off of your school board notes. Item number 10.
Second to the page 3 on there.
I'm assuming that's what that 4.75 in parentheses is.
Right.
So what I'm hearing, there's no way to reduce the cost. Is that? Okay, and that's, okay.
I'll make a comment to that. I know Commissioner Gooch, Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Phillips, and myself were probably sitting here, and we actually had a lawsuit with the Board of Education over this issue. And the county lost this lawsuit. The Board of Education, ruled by our states, they have control over that. However, we lost that lawsuit, and they can pick their architect and they can pay them what they want, but we all learned a good lesson from that, and we learned to work together better. And instead of paying 7% that we were seeing back then, and sometimes a little more, most of them have come to 5 and sometimes under. So just to kind of give you a little history.
Thank you, and I appreciate that very much. I have another couple questions. There's $2 million for construction-related contracts. What is that?
Some of your base bid that comes through, they have construction-related contingencies as well, and we try to build contingencies into that, so that was on their base bid.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
That is something we build in based on whatever we may need throughout the project cost. I don't know those specifics at this point. I don't have their schedule.
Some of those are going to be some geotechnical costs. That probably do some core drilling, some things like that. If the site out there needs additional shot rock or something like that, generally those are in the construction-related contracts. It's not going to be exactly $2 million, but I would assume that's what Mr. Lease asked for as a round number. But generally, it's the core drillings or a site survey company or environmental study that they'll have to do. Generally, that's what that is.
Yeah, in the future, could we get a breakout of that? I'm not asking for it tonight, but I'm just asking in the future, could we get a breakout?
I don't think you'll have that because it's done as the sites develop. So we get a schedule of values with our sites. We do lump sum bidding. Correct.
Well, you could get some of that, but some of that's going to be done throughout the project. The schedule of values is going to be part of the GC bid, which you could get after they sign the contract and send their first bill. Usually it's anywhere from 2 weeks to a month after the bid, but that's going to break down the GC project. And then these construction-related contracts, they may have a couple of them now, and then you could get the rest of them as they come through if you wanted.
Thank you. And if you could send that over just send me a copy when that's done. And this one is going to be how many seats? I think I heard 1,500.
No, sir. It'll be between 1,000 and 1,200.
1,000 and 1,200. Sorry, I must have misheard. 1,000.
Last meeting there was discussion about making an elementary school 1,500, and my recommendation was to never make one that big. But there was discussion on that.
Okay, and so the cost per new seat then would go up if you divided 60 million divided by 1,000. Okay, 60,000 basically. And how does that compare with other counties' costs per
Yep, I can tell you. I actually sent this to Mayor Carr about a month ago. I can tell you Williamson County, when they're doing their base, what their budget, they are budgeting it. Give me just a second to pull this up. And I know Wilson County had a bid come in October that was over $400 a square foot, and we're at $3.
And I'm asking for the cost per new seat, meaning $60 million divided by 1,000.
The one in Wilson
60,000.
was also 1,000 to 1,200.
So we haven't done that comparison. We've done a per square foot comparison?
No, sir, we haven't.
Okay. And let's see if I have any other. Yeah, I had one. Okay, this is a constituent question, actually, and so I'll go ahead and ask it. What alternatives beyond building a school, because they want to understand the process, okay? What alternatives to building a new school does the school board look at before deciding to spend $60 million or, add this many seats to a new school? I know last time we talked about, I think it was last time, we talked about adding, like a wing or two to some schools, and how many of those are available, things like that. I think that was partly the genesis of the question. But what alternatives were looked at? And folks have mentioned also things like year-round schools, other alternatives, different shifts of schools. And if you could just give us, because for the folks who asked me the question, and I'm not that familiar. I've watched some of the videos. I've watched the school board video. I watch health and ed videos, but I'm not as familiar with it in terms of this is the process to how we get to adding a specific new school as opposed to adding on wings or adding on or a shift or year-round, things like that. If you could elaborate, I'd appreciate it.
So a couple of things. When we're adding on wings, we are trying our very best to keep our schools to a manageable size, and we discussed that, I think, at length last time. We do not want elementary schools bigger than 1,000 to 1,200. We sure don't want our middle schools as big as they already are. Things that we have already looked at, we looked at multi-tracking, and so when you're looking at multi-tracking, you have a couple different ideas of looking at that. Year-round schooling is a form of multi-tracking, but we have looked at, it was with the elementary school sites, doing a 9 weeks on and splitting all students into basically a track, 3 different tracks. You would have different groups coming at different times. With accountability the way it is right now, everybody tests in April. From a school system standpoint, I'm not comfortable doing that. My funding's tied to it, our funding's tied to it, our education's reputation's tied to it. The other part of that is it increased when we looked at it. I think we looked at it in 1920 was the last time we studied. Wake County, North Carolina was the closest in size for us for multi-tracking. You have increased costs because of staffing and storage, and with the teachers right now, being frank, I'm not sure I could fill two shifts. I'd have a hard time. I have a hard time filling schools right now anyways with staff. Filling them with 2 shifts would be extremely difficult. In an era of parent choice, I'm also not sure that limiting our options would be a good strategy, but it's something we've looked at previously. It is not something that our school board is actively pursuing at this time for the reasons I mentioned.
Any other questions from the committee? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, another piece of history is I've never seen the school board bring $30 million from their ending fund balance to build a school. All of my questions were answered in health and ed. My motion is approve the bid as presented.
And do I hear a second? I've got a second. Sorry about that. And before we vote, Michael, do you want to go ahead and comment before we vote on this?
I have 2 comments. One, I have a number correction on a number that we're going to vote on tonight. And then the second is I want to give 2 funding options, a Plan A and a Plan B, to this body, and kind of give a timeline of the borrowing schedule. If you'll let me get that number real quick.
While he's looking at that, I want to mention something. In the past, this committee has recommended to the full commission, and it has been approved on, I will call them refinancing, where we've actually saved in the neighborhood of $26 million by changing the way we're paying off our debt. And we've actually got an opportunity here, and I'm hoping Michael's going to speak about that, so I'm going ahead and bringing it up. But it could be tied to the way we fund this. That's why I'm interjecting this now. Please bear with us. Please.
I also want to thank this Budget Committee asked us to look for ways to try to avoid sharing pennies as much as possible, and that's really where the 30 million came from. So Chairman P, thank you for bringing that suggestion. Ability for us to have to send as much money to the city as possible by us using 30 million out of fund balance. So appreciate the suggestion.
And I sincerely appreciate y'all looking at that. We have to scrape to come up with this money. Michael?
Yeah, it's Dr. Sullivan question. Oh, yeah, that's fine. So one correction on the amount that they're asking for us to borrow tonight is that amount will be $25,316,400.
Repeat that, please. 25.
$25,316,400. And look,
while they're discussing that, Vice Chairman Gooch, how did this fare in your committee, Health and Ed? What was the vote on it coming out of Health and Ed?
I believe it was unanimous.
Thank you.
When did you say we would go to the market on this?
that's what I'm thinking to announce. So I just needed to make that number change clarification. That is just because there was a $600 amount left off of the amount that went to Health and Ed. So it's a $1,400 swing from one of the pages. So Plan A on the borrowing. One of the things that we've talked with our municipal advisor is we'd like to do a debt refunding this spring. Originally, this body, and when we did the budget last year, we planned on borrowing in the fall. However, we do have an opportunity to do a debt refunding on a bond that's callable from 2014. Most of our bonds are callable in 10 years, and so we have one that is callable coming up next month. And so if we do that refunding in the spring, we would like to tack on this debt issuance, and we would go to the bond market in March or April this year. That would be Plan A to do the refunding, and that refunding we hope to save anywhere from $800,000 to $1 million. We would refund that debt issuance on a 10-year bond and then do their issuance on a 20-year, which is what we typically do. So that would be Plan A. However, if interest rates do not work out all the way up until we do the bond bid sale, then we would pivot to do their debt issuance in the fall, and we would issue a bond anticipation note if needed, like we did last year for the high schools, as we watch interest rates. Those would kind of be my two recommendations there. I want to point out one other thing. The number that they've asked for tonight does not include the sharing with the city. So we get an ADA rate that comes out usually in March or April. So that would depend on when we go to the bond market to borrow. So you're looking at a little over $29 million when we go to the bond market to borrow because of the roughly 14.5% to 15% share that we're going to have to share with the city of Murfreesboro. But that would be Plan A, or Plan B, really determined on interest rates, because if the refunding doesn't make sense, then we would push it to the fall. If the refunding does make sense for us to save money on interest rates, we would tack that on, and we hope to get a savings on our debt issuance costs from the rating agencies, since we just borrowed in October, and they would still be willing to use our audit that just came out this past month in January.
Basically, the fees that we normally are charged would not be charged, or would be reduced.
They would be reduced, is what they've kind of agreed to if we decide to go.
So we have an opportunity there to, I'll call it refinancing, restructuring, to possibly save up to $1 million, and tied to this because of the opportunity at this time. But I welcome any questions to Michael, because I'm not going to be very good at answering. Commissioner Irving.
Okay, so the debt refunding, what's the total, what's the amount that you want to
About $18 million.
How much?
About $18 million.
Okay, so that'd be 18.
And I would bring that back to this committee in March with resolutions. Part of that is you have to submit a refunding plan to the state comptroller's office. We are still watching the markets. Our timeline would be to submit that at the end of this month. If they approve that, they submit a document that I present to y'all either in March or April. And essentially they're signing off saying that that refunding also makes financial sense for the county. So that's the first step.
So is it 18 plus 29? Is there, just out of an abundance of clarity?
The 18 would be the refunding amount, which
Right.
we would issue on a 10-year bond since it's got 10 years left. It was callable at 10
Right.
years. So we would hope to get a lower interest rate. That's how we would save the money on that. We would then do a new issuance of debt on a 20-year bond for their amount that they would need for the elementary school.
So 47 million roughly.
Yes.
And hopefully a lower interest rate. Otherwise, we have to pivot down to,
Well, we would have two interest rates. One interest rate, we hope to be in the 2s for the refunding, and then their interest rate would be higher on, it would not be, it'd be two separate deals, because one's a 10-year, one would be a 10-year bond, and one would be the 20-year.
okay. Oh, I see. So we're piggybacking based on, to say fees.
Correct.
Okay, got
That
it.
is the reason we'd go in the spring, is to piggyback to save on the issuance fees, which could be a few $100,000 to save,
Okay.
potentially. But we didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to refund in the spring if we could. Now, this would be a tax exempt refunding because it's within 90 days of the call option. You know, some of the other refundings we've done in the past have been a taxable refunding because of the laws that didn't allow you to do that before the call option. But this is within 90 days of the call option.
Okay, but tonight we're basically being asked to approve construction of the Batey property in the amount of $60 million, give or take. And as part of that, we're committing to spend the $30 million out of fund balance. I'm just trying to make sure I've got this straight in my head. And another 25 million or so, plus the shared piece, $29 million through financing.
Yes, through a future debt issuance, yes.
Yeah, and basically that amount is provided for, as I understand it, in fact, that's covered under the amount that we budgeted for under the debt financing piece.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions from the committee? Now, I do have a motion and a second on this, I believe. Is that correct, Mark? Any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinial?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, I believe you've got one more, don't you?
This is for Fund 189, which is our building programs fund. And what this is reallocations of previous projects that are now finished and reallocating them to new projects. So the first project is the Laverne High design budget. RCS requests to allocate $2,500,000 from Fund 189 Plainview High School to Laverne High School for design services. Do you want me to read all of these?
Unless I hear an objection, please continue. Good.
Okay, and the second one is 814 South Church Street property. This is a request to reallocate our remaining funds from Fund 189 Rockville Middle School for $983,133, Smyrna Middle for $1,149,573, and Stewart's Creek Middle, $329,250 to the 814 South Church Street property. The third one is the Roy Waldron Annex renovation, formerly Laverne Primary. The request is to reallocate remaining funds from Fund 189 Rockville Elementary for $1,450,269 and the future middle school for $925,769 to the Roy Waldron Annex renovation.
We also, just a note, paid very close attention to make sure we were moving projects that had already been shared in different areas, so there shouldn't be any sharing issue.
That was my question. Committee, any questions?
Okay, so we're moving, these are all projects that have basically been completed and we're trying to recapture the money. okay?
Or future projects like the Plainview High School. Plainview High School isn't a priority right now, so Laverne High School is more of a priority.
Okay, so, and it's being specific, it's just basically being moved over to Laverne, South Church, and Waldron. Could you walk through each of those?
Yeah, of what they are.
Because a lot of people are not as familiar, and in particular, I mean, I'd like a little bit of focus on, okay, because these are not in the budget. These are not in the budget right now. This is these are new projects.
So Fund 189 is not a budgeted fund, and so really what this is leftover monies from prior bond issuances. So as we finished Rockville Elementary, maybe we had some money left over. As we finished Stewart's Creek Middle, we had $300,000 left over from that project. And so we need to reallocate that, or they're asking to reallocate to use that money first because we've already borrowed it. Instead of using new money, we'll use that before we would use any other money. And then we were careful when we met to talk about this, we were careful to move it within elementary to elementary, middle to middle, things like that. But this is really leftover bond proceeds from prior projects. But we, as the county finance office, we keep this allocated as a project basis, on a project basis, and I give a special projects report in detail to the Health and Ed Committee every month or every other month. And so this requires a vote, even though it's not on a budgeted fund like 141. We budget it as a whole based on a project approval basis. But that's...
We hit on a little bit, you were right, there weren't budgeted projects. We originally, when we met with County Finance Director, were looking at taking this out of 141 because that was our fund balance. But in meeting, it saved us money to be able to to take more out of fund balance for Batey Elementary than to use these out of 189 instead.
I think we wanted to save the most amount we could from the sharing with the city. And I think with the current financial situation, we've done that. So this kind of killed two birds with one stone. It allowed us to save the money with sharing with the city and allowed us to spend some really small amounts left over for some prior bond proceeds to avoid an arbitrage situation with the IRS.
Okay, so we basically had $25 million we're going to finance out of the other $30 million pulled out, and that's out of 141. And this is reallocating 189 basically. I guess one kind of obvious question, is there additional money in 189 that could be pulled out to use for other projects? How much is left in 189 and how could that?
I don't think we have anything left in 189 for an elementary school that would be of substantial. And you maybe could pull 1,000 out of something left over, but nothing. It would be very, very small, like a couple $1,000s out of something. But we pulled all of the elementary money out of there to go towards the, the Royal Waldron Annex for elementary. Sorry, I forgot that school's name.
Okay. So could you, so basically there's no money left over in 189 beyond this. That's what I'm hearing.
Not for an elementary school. Now, that conversation changes if there's ever a high school or middle school, but nothing that would make financial sense for us.
So if a middle school or a high school comes along at some point, that might be an opportunity. There might be additional money floating around.
Correct, and I think we're doing 3 high school additions right now, so if there's money left over from those, we would absolutely recommend reallocating that money before we borrow to either the Laverne High addition or before to a middle or something like that. I think my recommendation would absolutely be for that.
And there was no additional money that could have been applied to Oakland, Riverdale, Smyrna. That could have been applied to that to reduce that.
You probably could have allocated this $2.5 million, but I believe their plans were that either a Laverne High was coming or a future high school was coming very soon. And I believe the school system was looking to purchase land, so I believe that's the reason they did not do it at that time. And we don't have to share money with the city on the high schools, so I believe that was I can't speak for them because I wasn't here when they made that initial request. I don't even believe Dr. Sullivan was director then, but that was my understanding.
So, and then if you could address each of these, and part of it deals with some of the questions I'm getting and that I have deal with, the specifics of, Laverne High School design. What's the plan? How many seats are you going to add? How much is it going to cost? Things along those lines. South Church, I think that's one we've heard 2 or 3 different versions on, and if you could do some clarification on that. Roy Waldron Annex, I'm just not familiar with. I'm sorry. So if you could kind of start a little bit earlier in the process on that.
Yep. Laverne High School was approved by our school board, I believe, in that edition in 21 with Riverdale, Smyrna, and Oakland. It was the second year process. Without going way down that history, I think there were 5 additions that were requested. 3 were funded in 1 year, and the next ones, and so this is Laverne High School. The design is very similar to Smyrna High School. It's gonna, a couple of the parts, it's just now with our architect, so we're probably 6-8 months away from sending it out to bid. We're hoping to send it out to bid in the fall. Smyrna High School came in roughly at around $30 million. Of course, that will have been 2 years later, and so that's an additional cost by having to wait to be able to get that high school. So I would imagine somewhere between 40 and 50, but I don't have a great idea of what that's going to come back at right now.
So a ballpark for, if I could just interrupt briefly, so a ballpark for Laverne could be in the $40 to $50 million range, and you would be adding, what?
500 seats.
300?
About 500.
About
Yeah,
500?
it gets to 2,500, its capacity.
Because your current number was like 21 functional?
It has lots of portables there.
I'm sorry?
It has dozens of portables and 17, I believe it's 17 teachers without a classroom right now.
So the plan would be to get rid of the portables, so that's where the additional seats come in.
I will tell you there, I can go ahead and tell you that to get rid of portables isn't going to happen without a new high school, Laverne High. We'll build this addition, and I envision there still being portables.
So are you going to be above 2,500 at Laverne for a while?
I would love for it not to be, but if the growth continues, it will be. We've, just to give an example, from May of 2023 until now, we've added 1,300 kids. So we're not at that 2,000 threshold of adding students again, but we're in that 1,700 to 1,800 new student range. I'd be shocked if it's not at 2,500 before the addition is done.
And that addition would focus on classrooms and new students, right? Okay. Okay, sorry to interrupt. South Church Street and
South Church Street is going to be a alternative school. It is just now going out for architect as well. So we have a new architect we're working with on Church Street. The bottom floor and the first floor are being designed for an alternative school. So it's a 3-story building. The top floor, we're waiting to see what the architect kind of comes up with. We would like to use it as classroom space as well. It could be office space depending on what that overall cost, what the shape of those buildings and those rooms are in. The upstairs is much smaller than the basement and the first floor. Hoping at a minimum to be able to add 60 to 100 seats of alternative school. 60 to 100 depending on, it's also going to need some ADA work because it is I believe the building was going to need a little bit of work, but it was also less than $100 a square foot when we purchased it.
And the cost of the renovations, how much was that total?
That one we are looking at, South Church, just adding those numbers up real quick. A little bit under 2.5, that's a preliminary. If it gets above that when we send it out to bid, we're going to have to make discussions about where do we have in other funds, or do we need to do this in stages.
Thank you.
And Roy Waldron Annex is I don't want to say a building in disrepair, but it is a building that needs some work. Right now we have kindergarten and first grade from Roy Waldron School that attend that school. We are moving as part of our rezoning plan those students over to empty seats at John Coleman Elementary. Why that thing keeps going out. We're moving students from the elementary school, the kindergarten first, and putting them all under one roof at the main Roy Waldron building. And so the main Roy Waldron building will hold all of Roy Waldron students that will then be rezoned to Laverne Lake and John Coleman, which has about 400 empty seats. And so we're utilizing empty seats. This will then be a new special education / behavior school. We have, they're called BIC classrooms, behavior intervention classrooms, and then ASD, autism spectrum disorder classrooms. We have those spread throughout the county in various locations. We need to move those to one location. It is too much of a burden on an administrator that is not necessarily trained to deal with those and the teachers in that building. And so this will put all of those programs first. I was about to say kindergarten. You can't put kindergartners in, that state law. First through eighth graders in that building, and it'll also, I hate that we've gotten here, but we have, it'll also be one teacher for an alternative school for first through fifth graders. We do not have an alternative site for first through fifth graders, and I hate that we need that, but unfortunately we need that. But it'll be 1 to 2 classrooms in that building. That building houses about 360 kids.
So how many new seats are you talking about?
That one, it is going to, right now houses 360. We would not want that building to be over 100 with the high needs that it has, because they are.
So there's 360 and you want to reduce it?
Because we will open up classrooms in other locations. So right now we have our autism and behavior classrooms at Oakland Middle School, Whitworth Buchanan, and Smyrna Middle for the middle school. And then we have them at the elementary level at Cedar Grove, Walter Hill, and Plainview. If my memory serves me correctly, that's where they are. So we will gain those big classrooms back at those schools.
The cost of, what's the cost of Roy Waldron?
We are estimating about 2.3, 2.4 million. Again, that still has not gone out. The architect has it, but we haven't sent it to bid yet.
2.5 and the 2.3, they are set as the total renovation cost. Smyrna's the only one we have an estimate for.
Laverne, you mean?
I mean, Laverne, sorry.
Yes.
Laverne, sorry.
If it comes back again and these are way, way over when we send it out to bid, we're going to have to have conversations internally about, do we want to do this in stages?
Okay, so we've got 40 to 50, we got another 5, so let's round numbers, $45 to $50 million for those 3 additions. And we had $25 million that we're fixing to go out for bond. There's an additional, which means there's, of the 60 that was budgeted under debt service, that means there's 35 basically to, allocate somewhere. And so I'm trying to figure out, where does this fit into the funding picture for, okay, I'm presuming you're saying this is more important than a middle school right now?
No, sir, I'm not. They're all equally important. We are not going to, I do not recommend us picking and choosing again which schools are most important. That has caused a lot of angst in this community for the last 2 years.
I'm trying to get a sense for priorities. Would you rather have the middle school or would you rather have these?
Prioritize them.
Do what?
I respect that question. I will not prioritize them.
Has the school board made an effort to prioritize?
They will not prioritize either. We've discussed that internally.
I think the plan, you'll have about 30 million, because keep in mind, we'll go borrow 29, leave about 30 million in debt capacity. Now, that's all assuming interest rates. There's a lot of variables there, right? That capacity could go to 35 or 40 million. It could come down to 25. But I think when we met, one of the justifications was they were ready to do Laverne, but they wanted to, part of taking the 30 million, they wanted to take 30 million out of fund balance to do Laverne, but it made more sense to take it out for elementary. So I think the thought process is we'll use that leftover debt capacity to go towards the Laverne addition, and then we'll have to find another source, which is kind of what this body's been talking about for impact fees, which for that middle or high school that would come down the road. I think it's just that Laverne's going to happen quicker because we don't have the land to build a high school somewhere in the north end yet. And so I believe that was going to be a conversation for a later date as far as how to fund that future high school or middle school. It was just that, not that Laverne was more important, it was just quicker. And there was already a piece of land for it. That was my recollection, Dr. Sullivan.
And I appreciate the direction of that, because the follow-on question is, what is the debt capacity that we're dealing with now? And I know there were early discussions on kind of what is that number, and I'm trying to get a sense for, okay, who knows what this, adequate facilities tax impact fee ultimately looks like. And so I'm trying to think, if the budget's increasing 2 or 3 points a year, give or take, where does that put us depending on some of these other fees given where we are now, where does that put us in terms of a middle school and a high school? So it's basically, it's an open-ended question in terms of what's our debt capacity now, and what does it look like? Because if there's a priority that needs established in terms of funding, now's the time to know as opposed to down the road.
I can't answer for the debt capacity. We're asking for what we need.
I will tell you right now, we budgeted for an additional, there's probably about additional 40 million capacity in there right now, which is, I think, was very close to what they needed for Laverne. Now, some of that's some county needs we budgeted for. We put in there 6 million in capacity for a future forensic center at that time. So as far as total capacity, there's somewhere around 40 million, give or take, unless any bonds roll off. We do have one bond that we don't make a payment on next year, but then we pick up another payment the year after that. So could we squeak out some small amounts? Yes, but do we have any options for a $100 million middle school and $180 million high school? Our capacity is not that without any increased revenue, wherever that shall come from.
Right, and that's one of the things I was trying just to identify, and that's all I'm trying to do in this meeting, is identify that, okay, so we got $40 million roughly in additional debt capacity. And that assumes that these three, the design for Laverne, the South Church, and Roy Waldron are passed. That assumes that, correct? That assumes that assuming that the Laverne design, South Church, Roy Waldron passes, that leaves us at the end of the day $40 million of additional capacity. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I so move.
Have a motion from Commissioner Sereno.
Second.
Second. Vice Chairman Gooch. Further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. P?
Yes. Motion carries. Gentlemen, thank you.
Wait. I have one little simple question
You're recognized. Go ahead.
for the superintendent. In the past, superintendent's office has kind of had an open door situation. If a commissioner needed some clarification or some help, you're welcome to come in and sit down and discuss it with the superintendent. Is your office that way?
Always. Yes, sir, always.
Thank you very much.
I would just ask if you check to make sure, because I am in schools all the time first, please.
Thank you.
I don't want you to make a trip out there. Yep.
I've got a question for you. Did you get the number of the city schools?
Oh, their total number of enrollment? Yes,
Yeah.
sir, they're at 9,200. 9,200.
9,200.
9,200. Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's basically double dipping, isn't it? You know what I'm talking about, double dipping?
As far as a parent,
Okay.
being able to choose.
The formula that we have to pay the city, and then they're coming right around 9,200 of them that we're having to pay the education. So if that's not double dipping, I'm a helicopter pilot.
Get that state law changed, I'd be all for it as well, because we send a lot of money to them.
Can that be addressed?
State delegation wanted to. I don't. You're exactly right. All city school students become Rutherford County school students.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Go ahead.
You guys know I always try to be as respectful as possible, and I want you to know that I will not be here next Thursday, which is completely out of the norm in asking for funding, and if there was any way I could be, I would. So I want you to know why my absence. In the state of Tennessee, you only have to have a bachelor's degree to be the director of schools. I've spent my career in administration, but I believe in making sure that we continually learn, so I will be one of only a few have graduation for national superintendent certification on Wednesday, and I just can't make it back here on time on Thursday. So I apologize and hope that doesn't impact anybody's vote that I'm not here.
Who are you sending to represent you?
I will be sending Dr. K. Martin to represent
Okay,
me.
that's good.
So, gladly.
Thank you, Jimmy. Okay, guys, y'all want to take a short break or you want to continue? Let's roll. Okay, next up, item 12, general fund budget amendment for the sheriff's office.
Good evening. I'm Steve Spence, the Deputy Chief at the Sheriff's Office. The first amendment is to recognize revenue from a weapon trade of seized and surplus weapons. We're asking to put that $14,501 into our law enforcement equipment. Chairman, you want to take them one at a time, or?
Go ahead, and unless I hear somebody object, please continue.
The next amendment is to recognize revenue from other charges for services we received on vehicle fees, $23,668, and placing that into our motor vehicle line item. Next amendment is to recognize revenue from insurance recovery on 3 totaled vehicles and a call box damage, requesting the total of the $36,204 is put $1,422 into our maintenance repair of office equipment and $34,782 in our motor vehicle line item.
Motion second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Shrino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Please continue.
The last amendment is a drug fund amendment, is to remove money from the proceeds from confiscated property to maintenance of vehicles and repairs and data processing equipment. Asking to take $100,000 and putting $50,000 into the maintenance and vehicle repair and $50,000 into the data processing equipment.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Shrino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Right. Next, is item 14, Health Department Agreement.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Byron Cumbie, Director of your Rutherford County Health Department. What we have before you tonight is the annual co-op agreement between the state of Tennessee and Rutherford County. You may recall this is an annual agreement that we saw here at the same time last year. Item B at the bottom of the first page is the key figure for this body. It's $125,623. That's the county's out of pocket, and that number does remain consistent with last year and the year prior.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, Health and Ed looked at this. Everything is appropriate. My motion is to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And a second, and as we said, this is a reoccurring cost that we, Commissioner Irvin.
Quick question. This is in the budget. Thank you.
Any other questions? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Shrino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch? Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Sir. Thank you. Okay, next is item 15, General Fund Budget Amendment for the County Clerk, who's not able to be here tonight, so we're going to let Michael take care of that.
So this amendment tonight is for an increase in our hotel motel tax audit cost. On here, to date, these audits have found over $75,000 owed to Rutherford County. When I wrote this amendment a week or so ago, that amount is up further from even that as of yesterday when I talked to the county clerk. So we are taking this money, or requesting to take this money out of fund balance. However, once we get the revenue in from these audits, it will more than replace the $25,000 that we're asking to increase the cost of these audits.
Any more questions or?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinial?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. We've done item 16. We'll go to 17, and this is an agreement with Volunteer Behavioral Health Care Systems for co-responders. Michael, I think you're going to do that one too, aren't you?
Yes. So in the past, we have approved a grant for co-responders and the accompanying budget amendment. However, this is the contract with Volunteer Behavioral Health Care System. That'll be a contract between us and them for those two co-responders. Like I said, the budget amendment was already approved. This is just to cross our T's and dot our I's and make sure that y'all were able to see this contract with Volunteer Behavioral Health Systems. Additionally, both our county attorney, Nick, and the sheriff's office attorney, Kyle Evans, have both seen this as to legal form and have signed off on it from their end.
Any questions for Michael on this request? I have a motion or a second. Commissioner Harris.
I'm very familiar with this agreement, so I make a motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Commissioner Gooch. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinial?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Item 18, presentation of debt service fund cash flow and debt management policy for the 3-star program. And this is something we're required to do by the state, is present this.
No action is required to be taken on this. It's just a presentation.
Just for informational only, there's been no change in our debt management policy, our debt management policy, and then attached, I believe it's on page 2, you will see our projected cash flow statements. That is actual through the month of January, and then for the remainder of the year, February through June, our estimates. So you can see we do feel like we have a healthy debt service fund cash flow to cover our debts. And you'll also see that every April we have our large principal payment and interest payment on debt. But after that, we do have adequate cash flows for that payment.
Any questions for Michael on this? Hearing none, we'll go to the next item, which is under other business, and we actually have 2 items. Michael, I believe you'll be covering these for us.
Yes, and I apologize for having to add these 2. These both came this week after the agenda had already went out. The first one is going to be a grant agreement with the state. This is already part of our budget. However, this grant agreement is an extension and amendment with the state for our child support magistrate. We've had this for over 10 years. It does have a match, but it is already part of our budget, and then will be going forward as well. But that's what this agreement is. The reason you've seen it under other business tonight is there was a deadline. They got this to our grant director, I believe it was Tuesday this week, and so that's why you're seeing it tonight.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Commissioner Johnson, any discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinial?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Last is a general fund budget amendment for general sessions. And I'll say something before Michael jumps in on this. We were required by the state to pay certain salaries, and I think that's tied to population. Is that correct, Michael? Or
this one is actually tied to an inflation adjustment indicator that the AOC puts out. So I'll give a little background, but this budget amendment increases the salary for general sessions judges, but it's mandatory by the state. And then I'll explain. So there's 2 ways elected officials here get it: the constitutional officers, the mayor, the county clerk, register of deeds. That is based on population. You were correct on that, based on their raise. Then the AOC puts out the mandatory raises for our general sessions judges. They put out a raise last year of 4% for the general sessions judges that they sent all the finance directors and they put online, and that's what they got last year. They have come back and revised their CPI or inflation calculation for their raise to 5%. And so we're required to go back pay them to July 1 of 2023 to give them that extra percent. This budget amendment reflects funding for that.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion
Second.
and a second. As you said, this is kind of a unfunded mandate passed down from the state for us. Any other discussion? Have a motion and a second. Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Mr. Shrino?
Yes.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. P?
Yes, motion carries. And that finishes our business for tonight. We are adjourned.
Chairman,
Oh, what?
before we adjourn, I have a hard time passing up the opportunity to shout out our opioid.
Use your mic a little closer. We're not hearing you.
I'm sorry, our opioid board continues to meet, and the success that they're having is gathering attention, not only statewide, but regional-wise. And some of the reports that we're getting back right now is the type of reports that is absolutely, positively impressive. I think 3 lives have been saved. In essence, more than 3 lives, but the amount of deaths are going down, even though it's 3 going down when everybody else is going up. So you're on that board, Commissioner Harris is on that board, and I just can't tell you what it means to the citizens of the county that that opioid board continues its efforts in saving lives and affecting families in Middle Tennessee. I just wanted to say that. Great job.
Chairman Harris, you want to?
Yeah, just to give a really, first of all, thank you, Chairman. In 2021, we had 137 deaths. In 2022, we had 15 or 16. And then the numbers just came out, we had 113. So that's a 17% decrease from 2021, which means that we are going in the right direction. And this county has given over $800,000 in awards to local areas as far as organizations that combat this, as well as also in working with our sheriffs to have more officers and our probation officers for counselors. So I think we're going in the right direction. I think we have a lot of momentum going right now, and this is an testament to all y'all. This is not just me and Robert or a board. This is all the commissioners. So we share that with everybody. Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you also, but I do want to reiterate what he just said. All of us, it's not just this board, because the commission ultimately created this board and allows us to use those funds at the full commission's discretion. So it's not just us. So all of you can take the blame for this reduction in deaths. What was it, 17%? And what's so astounding about it is the rest of our state has increased, and we're one of the largest rates of death in the nation here in Tennessee. And for us to reverse that trend is pretty astounding, and a lot of people are taking notice and looking to see, is what we're doing actually making these changes. But again, Chairman Phillips, we appreciate that and thank you. Any other comments? We are adjourned.